had what ended up being a sprint stage from Bolin to Valence, 160 kilometers, and it wasn't crazy fast today, which meant that we actually both got to watch the finish. The racing was definitely on though. So we had a 4-man early break, somewhat contested at the start, a few riders sniffing around for it, and these guys didn't get too much of a lead at all the whole day, but made a good fist of it regardless of that. When these guys got their break, we then had Ineos and Geraint Thomas actually lighting it up on the first climb to try and create something. Didn't achieve much other than dropping Milan and a few of the other sprinters, who then their teammates from their various teams came back and brought them back to the peloton eventually. On the second climb, we saw another big name, Wout van Aert, attack solo this time rather than with the team. But with 10 kilometers later, he also set up and came back to the peloton, leaving just the 4 riders out in front. With around 30 kilometers to go, the cycling gods decided to take a nature break, and it started absolutely pissing down, which didn't look too nice to be riding along in those conditions. The breakaway held on to a 1-minute lead for a while on the run-in, and this started slowly dwindling despite some very treacherous roundabouts and white paint on the roads, which the riders were taking a lot of care over. Abrahamsen, at this point, Jonas Abrahamsen from UnoX decided to get out of the seat for about as long as his collarbone would allow, which was enough to ride his breakaway companions out of the wheel. He was then caught with 4 kilometers to go because the sprint teams weren't going to fall for this one again. And then with 1 kilometer to go, we had a crash which took out most of the sprinters. Now, we've watched a few replays ourselves, and I'm sure this replay will get put all over social media. And there's a few riders looked pretty banged up, but it just looked like Alexis Renard from Cofidis was pretty cooked, trying to push into the line of sprinters at this point. Hard to see what's going on for the riders because there's just spray kicking up off the roads everywhere, and he just went to push into a gap where there was clearly no gap, and he took out Pavel Bittner in this process, who had just nowhere to go. At about 10th wheel, with 1 kilometer to go, which usually means a lot of riders come down, which is what happened. Fortunately, most of them seemed to slide rather than tumble, so not too much damage for the majority, but it looked like there was a few riders, noticeably Biniam Gamay, looking very banged up. So hopefully there's no major injuries, but I would be surprised if there's no one getting some x-rays after that one. But we did see a sprint from a very reduced group from that last kilometer to go, which was won by the main sprinter to get through unscathed, Jonathan Milan, who has just been looking very good this last week, despite having to get through all the mountains to get to it. And he edged out Jordi Meus for second, Tobias Lund Andresen for third. Arnaud Delis looked like he was making a run of it until he almost rode himself straight into Milan's back wheel. So again, just a mixture of fatigue and not being able to see in front of him, I guess, there. And then Davide Ballerini from XDS Astana team in 5th. Aidan Burgess, what did you think of the stage?
Mate, it was a stage that honestly I'm disappointed that I had to wake up for. I could have just slept straight through this one. Hey, and if we were not doing the podcast, this would have been one that I would have just given this one a miss. However, that being said, the profile I think did suggest that there could be a little bit of spice to this. And honestly, there just wasn't. The sprint points snapped up by the breakaway. Breakaway gets caught. They're on a minute 30 leash for everything that I watched. I didn't really see them blowed out past that for the last. Sorry, my voice is failing me. For the last 20 Ks, they were on about 30 seconds. And then they end up getting caught with, I think Abrahamsen went through the 5Ks to go mark and then got caught just like you would expect him to. And it was really only the crash that kind of spiced things up. It looks, from what I saw at the end, like that is the end of Biniam Gamay's tour, which I think will go down in history as a tour that just never started for Biniam Gamay. He has done Sweet FA all Tour de France. So
well,
yeah,
the commentators that I assume we were both listening to, the SBS commentary team, put the mock on him, I think, because they mentioned that essentially every rider in the Intermarché team had gone down at some point, except possibly Biniam Gamet. And then he had a really bad crash and looks like he is going to be pretty sore regardless of the extent of the injuries after that one. So Intermarché as a team have just had a bit of a shocker, I think. And after, winning the green jersey in multiple stages last year, they'll be, licking their wounds, quite literally.
I guess the thing that frustrates me around that, and I'm glad you kind of brought it up there, I feel like there's almost like in cycling commentary, I don't know. I mean, I'm not familiar with cycling commentary overseas, but in Australia, I feel like there's almost like a pornography of crashing. There's a lot of excitement that is built up around potential crashes, and it's something that we all would say that we don't want to see in a cycling race. A lot of commentary is spent talking about how there will be potential crashes in these areas and how certain road furniture is likely to create potential crashes and stuff. It almost feels like we look to crashes to create excitement in cycling, or at least that's the way that I feel like commentary kind of builds it up. What do you reckon?
Well, I think part of that is exactly what you just said, in that apart from the crash, there was nothing to spice up this stage. So unfortunately, the commentators need something to talk about. In my very limited experience of commentating during races, when it is a stage like today where there's actually not much happening, rather than just continually saying who is at the front of the peloton, you got to talk about the reason they're at the front of the peloton as well, and the reason that all the riders were fighting for position from a long way out today is to avoid crashes. There's no other reason that they're fighting to be there. The vast majority of that peloton, they're not going to contest that final regardless. They're just trying to stay at the front because it's wet, because there's a lot of roundabouts, because there's a risk of crashing. So it's coming through the riders' ears constantly in the team radio that's what's going on. The commentators, I guess, are just, building on that. The other thing is, Tour de France in particular has the highest percentage by far of casual cycling watchers. For them, it's essentially the same as like for the amount that if I tune into a MotoGP race, I don't really know what's going on. I don't know the riders that much. When a crash happens, I go, "Whoa, geez, they crashed. That looked pretty bad." Like for those that aren't following along with these stories and aren't knowing what Abrahamsen went through in the lead up, the fact that he's already been there before, like why these teams are fighting for position, trying to bring someone like DeLee into the front at that point. The people that don't know these riders, and I guess the commentators are maybe catering to this, it's the vast majority of people watching just thinking, oh, if a crash happens here, that'll be exciting, despite the fact that it is clearly not good to see. And then we even saw the same thing with the Netflix doco. Again, they're just building on the crashes and showing that because that's what the casual cycling fan finds interesting, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you bring up Abrahamsen there, and he has been again one of the storylines of this Tour de France. So if anyone remembers back to the Tour de France last year, it was Abrahamsen that spent a lot of time in polka dots, which, as someone who has grown up used to, when I cut my teeth on pro cycling, it was Tommy Vokler who was always in the polka dot jersey. And so I'm used to your skinny bastards being in polka dots. And I reckon they would have had to go out and get a custom polka dot kit made for Abrahamsen last year, because I don't think they would have had one in that size. That dude is a unit. And so he really spiced up last year's Tour de France. And then he's sort of back at it again. What is it? He's not 6 weeks out of breaking his collarbone.
Yeah, I was thinking about it watching as well, in that it's funny because he was such a cool story when he popped out. I was racing against him before he got swole, when he was small and not anything amazing. And then I remember he showed up at the Classics last year, and that wasn't straight after him getting bigger, but he showed up at the Classics and he was in every single breakaway, every classic race, and it was just look for him at the start and you'll get in the breakaway, and he's the breakaway man you want to be with because he will just keep riding and riding and riding. But the funny thing for me is he changed the game a little bit in terms of eating heaps more, not worrying about weight, not counting your calories all the time to lose weight, but counting your calories to make sure you're fueling enough to do the sessions well. And we haven't yet seen this generation of massive tanks coming through that can just churn out watts all day. Anyone new, but I think in a few years' time we'll see a lot more of this kind of rider that maybe before was trying to turn themselves into a GC. Like you get these strong engines that 400 plus watt thresholds that are trying to turn themselves into GC riders, because if you don't have much of a sprint, that's generally what you have to do if you're that strong. Lose a bit of weight, try and go up hills fast. And I hope what we see with juniors coming through, because for their health and longevity in the sport, it's going to be a bit better rather than just desperately trying to get skinnier and skinnier and lose muscle, just fueling themselves well enough. And then this generation of riders that are just breakaway kings that can just get in these situations and do what he is doing. And I'm sure those watching the Tour de France and remembering him from last year, hopefully there's those young guys that are a bit bigger, just go, okay, I want to be Jonas Abrahamsen rather than I want to be like, now it's gone past sort of the Tom Dumoulin type where he could have gone the same way and just been a really good time trialist and super strong breakaway rider, but instead losing weight trying to be the GC rider. And that obviously worked super well for him. But I think the vast majority of people coming through would be more suited to going with their natural body type, which reverts to when you feel well and then doing what he's been doing, which is working for him.
So you're predicting the renaissance of the breakaway in the next couple of years after what I would say has been a bit of a dearth of breakaway riding.
Yeah, I think we'll see more of that kind of rider. It'll be like Shane Warne coming through and then a whole generation following of leg spinners. We're going to see a whole generation of breakaway kings.
Yeah. No, fair enough. I'd love to see it because I think we're both big fans of a breakaway here. So there's not really much else to take away from this, except it looks like the green jersey is now locked up. There was a bit, I don't know if Poggy wins some stages, there is still the chance that he could.
Well, that was the interesting story, is that if Pogačar starts just contesting these intermediates, he doesn't have to beat Milan, and he wouldn't be expecting to. But if this one at the start, it's all still together. There's no breakaway. Actually, there was the small breakaway in front, but Milan's just picking off enough points. If Poggy starts contesting these and just running 2 or 3 places behind Milan each time, then he basically gets the jersey, depending on how these stages play out. So I don't know if part of it is just him trying to be the nice guy, because I don't see that he would have to save that much energy that he can't just roll past a few places behind Milan. It's not a massive sprint at this point because there's not many guys contesting those points. So I think this is just him trying to keep the peloton on side and not be too greedy. And yeah, because we saw a few years ago Chris Froome in a similar situation coming into the Champs-Élysées stage 21, and he actually had a crack at the intermediate sprints then because he said, nah, stuff, I want to try and get the green jersey as well as the yellow. So I don't know. It'd be interesting what happens, whether he starts having a go at it. It doesn't look like he's going to at the moment, but that was one of the more interesting things to happen today.
Yeah, and again, on a day that didn't have a lot in there. However, there was enough to be able to pull out a domestique of the day. And I think the domestique of the day is Quinn Simmons.
Yeah, I can't go past that. And it's funny that you've said that because you missed the first climb where he basically was the reason that it wasn't a breakaway stage, in that he was policing the breakaway at the front. We spoke about it yesterday that what Little Trek's been doing is throwing someone like him into a break, but instead they clearly just said, no, we can win from a sprint, probably more than we've got a chance of you winning from a break, which would have been hard to take, I guess, for Quinn in the team bus, but clearly he wasn't phased at all by that because he, on the first climb, basically anytime, so Ineos went to the front, ripped it. Anytime there was a gap in the pace, because they burnt through their riders pretty quickly, clearly hoping someone else would take it on, and Quinn Simmons would just go straight to the front, sit on the front, and just ride a tempo a little bit slower. Milan ended up getting dropped by a minute, actually, and Simmons was still policing the front of the bunch, just stopping the attacking, basically. So what could have happened is he could have dropped back straight away, started towing Milan, but then if there's attacking going the whole time at the front of the bunch, you can get a 20-man break that rolls off the front, and even if they come back to the peloton, it's really hard to control that then. But yeah, Simmons was just unbelievable, and just anytime there was a lull, he would go straight to the front. Then once they were confident there wasn't going to be a move, he went back, towed Milan back to the peloton, and then jumped straight on the front of the peloton again. So definitely 3 votes to him for today, I think.
Yeah, big time. And I did want to touch on Quinn Simmons, actually, because I think I've not read the room in regards to the way that a lot of people in the United States seem to feel about Quinn Simmons. And I think this is a bit of a shame, really. I chucked up a couple of things just in response to the comments he made about Wellens being favoured by the motorbike rider. And I didn't mean to make this in any way political. I just had a basic understanding of the fact that he might have been slightly leaning towards the right wing of American politics as opposed to the left wing. But man, I kicked the hornet's nest by making a comment about Quinn Simmons. He seems to be super divisive, and I don't really have any skin in the game. When I come to cycling, what I want is to watch cycling. I'm not involved in cycling for the politics. In fact, I see it kind of as my sanctuary away from that. I don't think one of the good things about cycling is that the riders don't tend to have big personalities, and so they often don't talk about these kind of things. So it is somewhere where you can almost project whatever you want onto different riders. I feel really bad for the guy. He's having a fantastic Tour de France, like an absolutely outstanding Tour de France, where every stage we've talked about him, he's been animating stages. He's in the United States national champions jersey. He must be coming into this race with so much pride. And I feel like all of that is being taken away from him.
Yeah. And the crazy thing, I was thinking as well that it is a bit sad that that's the way that the people in the US are thinking. And yeah, I can't speak for every cyclist here, but there's going to be a lot of people get into cycling because they're riding their bike, because they're trying to do good things for the environment, and it's hard to gauge the political sphere of the cycling world, but I think that's a good thing, because I want to be able to go out and ride with buddies or talk about cycling with buddies, and not say, oh, I can't support this person or ride with this person because they vote this direction or this direction. For those that have no idea what we're talking about, like he hasn't come out and said like anything crazy or anything racist or misogynistic. He's just come out and supported the current president of the United States, which you can take from that what you will, because of what the current president of the United States has done with his own policy and his own views. But regardless of that stance, I don't think that means that I don't think we should be cancelling cyclists for their political views in general, and I don't think that should take away from your enjoyment of watching him on the bike. And clearly, regardless of his political views, he's a bloody good teammate, because the guys that I've spoken to in that team love racing with him, and it's pretty clear from when you watch today that he is a bloody good teammate, because he pretty much single-handedly made sure that Milan won that stage.
And I've spoken to someone who is familiar with Quinn Simmons, and they've said he is the nicest person to deal with. And again, going back to what you said, this whole controversy seems to have started from one message that he sent on Twitter when he was 20. I've done some research into this. I can't see any statements that he's made that overtly express support for the president anymore. It is something that happened in 2020, I think. And
and it was a few. It was backed up by a few Twitter likes, which like nowadays you can't even see likes, but like that kind of thing is 20-year-old kid doing that, and then just assuming that he hates anyone that's not American, hates anyone that's not white, hates women, this kind of stuff, which people seem to be jumping in and doing, which just from all that we can see is not the case whatsoever. And I don't think anyone listening, or hopefully the Americans seeing that Star-Spangled Banner on the front of the peloton, should let that take away from their enjoyment of watching an American doing so well in the biggest race in the world.
No, he is by far the best performing American in this race. And like, I don't want to delve too much into the politics of it, because at the end of the day, it's not my politics. And so to an extent, it's not my place to say. And I've got opinions on the state of politics globally and the state of politics in the US. However, it's like 50% of the country that has voted for the current president. I know it's not exactly 50% of the country. So I think there needs to be across the board like a cooling of some of this rhetoric. You can't just put people into these camps. Like, at the end of the day, some people have decided that there is an opportunity for growth on the other side. And if you disagree with that, you can't just ostracize that 50% of the country. Like, Quinn Simmons seems like a nice guy. I think I'm a teacher. We do Venn diagrams a lot of the time. If you did a Venn diagram of what these people wanted, I think the stuff in the middle would actually there would be a lot of commonalities between these people that are hating on Quinn Simmons and the things that Quinn Simmons wants. There's just a difference about the way to go about it. Anyway, at the end of the day, the guy's absolutely tearing up the Tour de France, and he is a character. He is someone that brings, like, people are hating on his hairstyle and his mustache. Like, get more of that in there. A lot of these guys have just a short back and sides haircut and no personality. Like, it's just so good to see someone on the front that just clearly is out there to have a bit of a good time.
Yeah, I agree. It's good seeing it changed up, and I can't see why there's not more I can see, because I have seen, unfortunately, a lot of the discourse around American politics. I can see why there's not more people getting around him, but like, he's just a cool guy to have representing America in the front of the peloton. So to get behind him would make sense. And I wanted to actually touch on something that he did mention the other day, and got a bit of flack for that as well. But about the motos, he does have a very valid point there, in that most people at home, it's really hard to gauge how close the motos are, because you are the moto when you're watching on TV, and you're not getting this shot of how close the motos are to the riders, which side they're on, how much of an influence it's having. But it does change the race dramatically. And I noticed it in today's stage, actually, that Van Aert, when he attacked off the front, just never had any support from the motorbike. The motorbike was instantly behind him. So going across the top, we had a massive run at the motorbike, got a good slingshot there. And then from then on, the motorbike was always behind him or to the side, which touched on earlier in the tour is even worse for drag, whereas the breakaway constantly had a motorbike in front. And you might think, okay, this is coincidence, whatever. There was two Frenchies in the front, and I don't buy into the conspiracy that they're trying to control who wins the stages, but it's not out of the question that this stuff does happen as well. I did a race, Tour of Hungary, a few years ago, which is by no means a Tour de France, but is a reasonable level race, a point HC now, I think. And there's a Hungarian champion, the breakaway, one year, 6-man break. They got out to 2 minutes, and we kept riding harder and harder, more teams going to the front. We averaged 54k an hour for the stage, pan flat stage, 100k, and the breakaway won by a minute and a half. And we could not understand. But what had happened was not even the motorbike, the helicopter pilot knew the Hungarian champ, wanted him to get the win. The helicopter pilots come down low enough right behind, basically just push the breakaway along. And we were on the peloton like, how the hell is their teams doing full peels with 30k to go and the brakes going out? But the same thing happens with motorbikes way more often than it should, in terms of them influencing the race. And I don't think at this level of race they're trying to decide who wins it, but it just shouldn't influence the race as much as it does. like today, you could see we're even getting annoyed with it. And yeah, it did stop him potentially being able to bridge to that breakaway when he attacked. I think, yeah, we need coverage of the race. Otherwise, the race doesn't happen. Otherwise, we can't do stupid podcasts like this one. But for me, just get the drones in. We're seeing him in cyclocross where there's no reason for everyone thinking, the range isn't good enough. The cars still have to be there in terms of the race director has to be in front of the race. The commissaires still have to be there. Just chuck those drone pilots are incredible at what they do. We've had a few on team training camps before, but have the drone pilot sitting in the back of one of those com cars or the race director car, and just when you need to change the batteries out because they can't do 6 hours, just bring it into the car, like stop on the side of the road, whatever. But I don't think the tech is too far away, and just bring that in, and then it doesn't influence the race. What do you reckon about the drones?
It was something that China was doing really well. If you've been to China, one thing that I noticed was like every night in these cities they have these drone shows. China is like proper obsessed with drones to the point that there is a anti-drone vehicle that follows the race around to take down any drones from the spectators. One of my friends did see one of these drones get shot out of the sky, and they just sort of point a beam at it and the thing just falls like a stone. It's pretty incredible. So yeah, I think they were really trying to push it there. And the Tour Down Under had some good drone footage. There was an iconic one where the drone ended up hitting a tree and crashing, which was quite funny to watch. And, at the end of the day, what you're doing, though, is by bringing in drones, you're taking away the jobs from those guys that ride the motorbikes and the jobs from those guys that sit on the back of the motorbikes and film, and turning that over to a drone operator. But I mean, at the end of the day, that's kind of the future, and the footage that you can get from these drones, because they can get a lot closer and they can get a bunch of different angles in there. It is exciting. We've had motorbikes cause accidents, but you could potentially have a drone that could cause an incident.
Yeah, and when they first came in, I remember there was a bit of pushback from riders, myself included. I thought, I want a drone flying around. It's going to drop out of the sky. That was 5 years ago now, when they first started bringing them in just around the start of races. But now the tech is really good. Obviously, there is still the potential of the pilot just losing concentration and flying it into a tree at some point. There's also the potential of a moto in the race causing crashes, which happens a lot more than it should. And also, not even the causing crashes, the motos trying to pass the peloton. That's something you don't see too much in the coverage, but that's an absolute pain when you're in the peloton. You spread across the road trying to hold your position, and then there's a moto trying to push through the peloton. With drones, you're going to have that issue. And then, there's the noise of them buzzing around your head, but there's noise constantly in races anyway. And for me, 100% would prefer drones rather than motos in a race as a rider.
I think it was, I know the cyclocross uses drones heavily in their coverage, and the cyclocross world championships last year, I think it was, had some fantastic drone footage along certain stretches. So it does work really well with circuit races, but also just having the drone operators placed at certain points, there are ways that you could get it to work, and it does offer a really exciting, much closer, and I guess almost more personal vantage point. It almost feels like you're a part of the race because the drone can go along and move around, as opposed to other, the motorbike is a fixed camera. The amount of shots that you have available is limited, and that's not so much the case with drones. So yeah, I'd love to see it.
Cool. Yeah, and then I was just thinking there, we are seeing it in the road racing with Milan San Remo as well. They're doing it down the final descent, so I think just bring in more of it. We'll go to dickhead of the day, I guess. For me, I already mentioned him at the start, and I can't blame the guy, because I've been there before when you're completely cooked. He's a lead out man, Alexis Renard. He's drilling it on the front, trying to set it up for, I assume, one of the Cofidis sprinters. But and and yeah, you can't see too much with the spray off the road, but just pushing into a gap that wasn't there and causing a big crash. And he will be really disappointed with himself for doing it when he watches the replay for sure. And there's no way he wanted to do it, but at the same time, just wasn't necessary and could have avoided that big crash with all those riders coming down.
Cofidis is the blue shell of this Tour de France, aren't they? They're like the Mario Kart blue shell. They just seem to be annihilating the peloton this Tour de France, which I'm sure they would be terribly embarrassed about. But not knowing the Cofidis guys too well, is there anything to this? Is there a lack of experience? Is it just that they're desperate to get some stages?
Not a lack of experience. Like, these guys race so much. The French racing that they're coming from is known for being super heavy on the bike handling. Like, French amateur racing is all constantly through roads like what they're racing. It is just lack of respect for them in the peloton, in that their other riders just see them at a lower level than the big World Tour teams. They are a World Tour team, but more likely to be pushed out of the way, which means that even though a lot of these instances we've seen, it's not that another rider is actually trying to knock them out of the way. But when that's happening to you, the whole stage, you're getting pushed around. I've been there on the teams that aren't getting respected. You're getting pushed around. You have to push back even harder to push into these situations and to keep your spot at the front. So that could be part of it. And I'd say that's the main reason. And then a lot of it is just coincidence more than anything, in that just you see it because we've seen a few of their not everyone, but a lot of riders are crashing in this Tour de France and every single Tour de France ever. It's not something new, and it's just something that we've seen that unfortunately their team has just been at the center of a few big ones.
Yeah, and I mean, it sucks, and you hate to see it, but yeah, they have. I think they'll come out of this being sort of the terminators of this Tour de France, and that will be the legacy. If there was going to be a Tour de France Unchained, I think the episode on Cofidis would be very interesting, because it would be really cool to see inside the team camp when they are sort of having these consistent disastrous days and these crashes and things like that. It would be really, really interesting. And another one that I think would be really interesting to see inside of is Intermarché. They had a fantastic year last year with Biniam Girmay coming out and winning the green jersey, first African or Black African to do so. They've been completely MIA this year, except for, again, in crashes.
Yeah, and like they're the ones I want to see, because I've been in teams like that before where just everything's going wrong and you want to see behind closed doors. I don't know if it gets the hits because you're not going to see the big blow-ups, because riders are going to be smart enough not to do that on camera, and then it's just not as nice as watching a team that's winning all the time. But yeah, it's really tricky, and it's a French team. They're close to the relegation zone. Points-wise, there's pressure. It's the biggest race in the world. Everything for sponsors relies on doing well in this race. So would not be a good vibe in the team camp there at the moment, I think.
I don't even know if they've pulled out a top three at the moment. You know, they'd be coming in the Tour de France thinking, if we win a stage here, that completely changes. The UCI points that are on offer for stage wins here are insane. That's what they'd be coming here and hunting. And at the back of their mind, I think they would have been thinking that if things went the right way for them, Girmay would have been a shot at the green jersey. I don't think anyone would have had him as a favourite for it, with Milan and Merlier coming into here as the two best sprinters in the world. I don't think he was ever a chance unless something happened, like a crash that took potentially Milan out. But yeah, it is a shame. Girmay was a huge story for Eritrean cycling. Being at the Tour of Qinghai, there were so many Eritreans there. I was actually really surprised by how heavily they were represented in some of those teams. And one of the things that I was able to chat to them about, things like talking with Hennick at the end about Girmay, and it's something that they're really passionate about, and they all look up to the guy. So it is a shame that he's not getting the results. But I guess that's the reality of cycling. It doesn't always go well for you.
Yeah, exactly. Super hard to back up every year. And yeah, you just need everything to go right to be able to perform at this top level. And this is the top of the top level. So all these guys that you're seeing performing, for the most part, have had a perfect run in. We say that. And the guy that was in the breakaway again broke his collarbone about a week before the race. But still didn't hamper him too much. Like, these guys just have to have everything go right before the race to be in the condition to do it, and then during the race to also perform well. And you just see so many riders that have done well in the past, and then if it doesn't come together perfectly, they're just not able to put it together. And there's plenty of riders we could list from the race where that's been the case, and they just haven't been able to fire when you'd expect that they would. And that is just the sport. And yeah, it's not a race where you can just fluke a win here or there. You just have to be absolutely flying for it.
Yeah, totally. And I think, that's the thing that's underappreciated. Every single one of these, it's every day is a race within a race. And for some of these guys, stages like today are the stage that they're targeting all year. It's the most important stage. They would have picked a handful of stages that they think they could win, like Cofidis. They're not coming in here thinking that they're going to win the Tour de France. And for the most part, they're getting their ass handed to them every single day. In those climbing days, they would all be in there just suffering. And they've picked a couple of stages in this race that they think they might be able to target. And they're desperate for that. And that's why that positioning fight is so important. And also, we've got a question about Poggy here. You see on the commentary, the SBS is often talking about, and I'm sure other countries are as well, how good Poggy's positioning in the peloton is and how he's always able to move up. That's because, to an extent, he gets given that because he's Tadej Pogacar, and Cofidis is not being given those spots. If they try and take a wheel, they get nudged off it, whereas no one's going to be nudging Poggy off a wheel because you don't want to crash out the yellow jersey. That's the worst thing that you could do. But also there's just a level of respect with that guy that these Cofidis guys don't have.
Yeah, and it's kind of either a positive feedback loop or a negative feedback loop, in that the best riders end up having an easier path through the peloton, and the riders that are suffering more and struggling have a slower path, like a more difficult path through the peloton, especially finishes like today where it's wet. Everyone wants to be at the front. Like when I'm in a race, if I see Tadej Pogacar come up alongside me, I'm pretty happy to sit on his wheel because I know that, one, he's going to be able to keep going forward and move through, and then also he's not going to get dropped or ridden off the wheel. If I see someone that's suffering and I've seen them sliding back for 2 climbs already and they've popped back up in the bunch, there's no chance I want them in front of me because I know that they're going to do it again. And so the fact that these guys in Cofidis in those hard moments are going to be drifting back through the bunch, you see them coming back to the front at the finish like today, and there's no way you want that person in front of you. So there's just those gaps don't open up and they're more likely to be involved in stuff like today.
Totally. Going back to the dickhead of the day, my dickhead of the day, there was another spectator that was mooning the bunch.
Yeah, the brown eye. I did notice that. The big stare down with the brown eye.
Almost took down Caden Groves, I think. So that one. It's every day they seem to be outdoing themselves. And yeah, today it was someone just showing their ass to the peloton.
That's a genuine dickhead move. You can be a dickhead and do that. Just stay off the road while you're doing it. These riders are going so fast. At that point, they were going 60k an hour. And as I've said a few times, you can't see when there's spray flicking up from the thing. So yeah, he wasn't far off ending up with a helmet shoved halfway up there, I think.
Yeah, would have been just deserves for him, but I would have felt sorry for the head that had to follow that helmet up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would have been a public service for whoever did it. I think they would have got the most combative rider for the day. So moving on then, we didn't have heaps of questions for today. I think partly because today isn't a stage that people are expecting to be a shake-up. It ended up being, to be honest, more stale than I expected. But Caitlin stuck the question in here in the chat, which is a good reminder. These are all live. So if you do find yourself wanting some more Tour de France action afterwards, jump onto the Domestique YouTube channel. And while you're there, I would suggest subscribing. Again, they're doing pretty well on the social media aspect in regards to Instagram. I think they just hit 25,000 followers on Instagram, which for a new platform is pretty good. But the numbers on YouTube are not where, honestly, I think they deserve for the content that they're putting out. So if you are here and you are enjoying this stuff, maybe consider hitting the subscribe button so that you can get more of this coming to your YouTube feed. But Caitlin has asked, over the last 2 days, there's been a lot of talk about Pogacar being able to close finger guards attacks in the saddle, and some questions about whether that has to do with the fact that his arm is still sore. I know in the past, Poggy sort of said the only reason why I would get out of the saddle is if I need to drop a large acceleration, and I'm already going fast enough in a lot of these situations that ramping it up from the saddle is better than getting out of the saddle. We have seen him attack out of the saddle, but do you think it looks like he has? Earlier, you talked about him having maybe some trouble with that arm later in the Tour de France.
I don't think it's too much to do with the arm, and in my experience, and I would guess it's the same when you are going that hard in those moments. An old wound like that, you're not even thinking about. You're just thinking about how much your legs are screaming at you and how much your lungs are hurting and how hard it is at that moment. So I don't think that would be factored into it. Like, I'm sure Jonas Abrahamsen's shoulder doesn't feel that good, and he was still able to win the sprint for the stage the other day and still able to attack at that moment because everything else is actually hurting more. I think it's something we've seen from him a lot more this year, is sitting in the saddle and following attacks. He's not doing it all the time. On to yesterday, you could grab 6 or 7 examples of him and Jonas going at each other. It seems like he prefers to follow attacks in the saddle, and that might just be a bit of a mental thing, knowing that, okay, I've still got a bit more left. Like, I'm going to follow this one in the saddle so that if I have to accelerate again, I can get out and really crunch it. But from what I've seen and what's been coming out of the UAE camp as well, he's just been doing a lot more strength. Well, this is for a while. Since this year, he's been riding more in the saddle, and it's because he's been doing a lot more strength work, trying to utilize the glutes without having to get out of the saddle. And for the climbing efforts, this is just going to be more efficient for the longer climbs, because riding out of the saddle just uses more oxygen for the same power output. There's no way of getting around it because you're just using your upper body more, you're using your arms more as well. So I think it's something that they've particularly focused on, because he was someone in the past that has ridden more out of the saddle for those high accelerations. When he is trying to drop someone or has to really jump to follow, then you see him get out, but he's trying to stay in clearly, and I don't think it's to do with his arm.
You also get a larger range of motion when you're sitting down. Your pedaling is more efficient. And so as a result, for the amount of effort you're putting in, you get more out of it. It's only when you're really dropping serious attacks, my understanding, that, being at it, like in sprints and things like that, where you really need to be using your entire body to wrestle the bike to get the maximum amount of power out of it. Aside from that, we saw Lance, I hate to bring him up, but we saw Lance Armstrong was often in the saddle, and climbing from the saddle is, if you're doing an indoor training ride and you want to test this out, just stand up for a minute and try and do like your zone 2 out of the saddle and see how much more it takes out of you than it does to sit down and do the same amount of power. I hate doing indoor rides, and my ass gets uncomfortable, so I mix it up by standing up every now and then. And like a minute out of the saddle pushing 200 watts is pretty taxing compared to just sitting in the saddle and doing it. So yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of reasons, but he doesn't seem to be, at least from what I can see, too impacted. His arm is still covered though, which is interesting. He still has a full sleeve, still got the aerodynamic sleeve on there today. So he's definitely still recovering from those wounds, but yeah.
Yeah, and the burns take a long time to heal, particularly when you're riding every day. So your body just isn't recovering well when you're spending 4, 5, 6 hours a day on the bike, and also all the travel and not sleeping amazing. So the skin will be repairing, but it doesn't seem to be taking anything out of his riding, which we like to see, not because we're huge Tadej fans, but just because you don't want to see someone hampered by the results of a crash. Should we crack on to tomorrow's stage?
Yeah, which is an absolute banger of a stage. Yeah, this one is tough. So it is, what are we looking at here? 172 kilometers of straight up balls to the wall action. It's pretty much climbing out of the gate. There's an intermediate sprint at 23.5 kilometers. This is going to be taken, I think, by the early breakaway. It's pretty steep at this point. I don't think the sprinters are going to be up the front getting this. I may be wrong. And then we go 3 HC climbs, one up the Col de Glandon, another the Col de la Madeleine, and then the last one is the Courchevel.
Col de la Loz, is the other name. So for those that can think back a few years, this is the one where Tadej Pogačar blew up completely and gave the "I'm gone, I'm dead" quote, which is been a meme since then, and he will be very keen to remove that one from his memory and replace it with a better memory. So going to be interesting whether it is the break or just because it's so hard. We've got 5,600 meters of climbing in 172k, so just the fact that it's that hard, it's going to have to be such a good rider in the break to actually stay away, just even if these guys behind are riding solid the whole day. It's just going to mean that they're close, and to be able to actually sustain that power output after being in a break the whole day is going to be difficult. But I am thinking that UAE have no desire to bring it back. We might see Viz Melissa try and light it up again and really put the pressure on is the only thing. And I think they'll go with their satellite rider strategy. But I actually am going to assume that they'll go with the satellite rider strategy again and not end up taking it up from behind. And I'm going to go with Simon Yates for another stage win.
Okay. Yep. I think I'd be expecting to see Wout van Aert and Simon Yates in the first one trying to get up the Col de Glandon and see where things are going. I think this is the one where Vingegaard gets his stage win. I think Visma will be, this is the one that I think they're targeting. They'll have memories of being able to crack Tadej on here. I think they'll throw everything at trying to crack him and his team. They are a rider down. This is, I think, this is the hardest stage. It's 3 HC climbs. It's the opportunity to start trying to claw back some time gaps. This has to be the one that Vingegaard wins if he wants to be able to challenge the Tour de France. He's still talking the talk. He's saying he's confident. He backs himself. He's got confidence in himself. If he does, this is the one that he has to win. If he doesn't win this stage, the Tour de France is done.
Yeah, like it is. There is enough there that if Pogačar's not on a good day, it can completely change the whole tour. And we've seen it before. He lost minutes and minutes last time we came up here. So there is 100% potential. The thing is, I just have not seen any signs of Pogačar faltering yet. But yeah, it's a new day every single day. We're going to have to see what the weather is tomorrow because it can change by the minute up there as well. But if it is crazy hot again, it's not something that he liked last time it was there. It's definitely something he's worked on a lot since then. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting stage and certainly one worth watching. Unfortunately for everyone in Oz, it is a school night, it's you included. So it's going to be tough to choose which point you wake up for with so much action throughout the day. And also even for the Frenchies, just having it on Thursday isn't ideal for the crowds, but I'm sure we'll see some big crowds on these climbs regardless.
Yeah, it sucks. It's going to be a fantastic stage. I don't know how I'm going to swing this one. But yeah, it's definitely one to watch. But yeah, with that, I'm going to go to bed because
rest up. Yeah, big stage to prepare for
today. But yeah, we're coming into the final countdown. We have 5 days left, I think. Was it Thursday, Friday,
four,
Saturday? No, four.
Four more
days.
stages.
Yeah. So, it's really sad. This is the thing that I look forward to every year, and it's my Christmas, and it's almost over. But anyway, we'll see you all again tomorrow, and liking, sharing this stuff is really, really good. Thanks, Caitlin. You're always in the comments, and we genuinely appreciate you. And if you jump over and have a look at what the Domestique is putting out, again, some really good stuff. I didn't have a look to see whether De Luce we talked about.
He did. We got some good analysis of the Ben Healy numbers from yesterday.
Yep.
So well worth checking that out. His Vontu numbers are pretty scary, how good that was at the end of a breakaway day, which also puts into perspective how good the GC guys are for closing nearly 6 minutes.
Yeah, and, we do have a lot of people that are coming out and saying that they're skeptical because people aren't sharing the numbers. Well, Ben Healy's putting his out, and De Luce is analysing them. So, if you are interested in that, jump over and have a look at that, and, maybe get some of the facts straight there for yourself instead of speculating on hearsay. So, anyway, with that, we're going to love you and leave you, and we will see you again tomorrow. Thank you very much, everyone.
Beautiful. Thanks for listening, guys. Cheers.